I am a big fan of spooky books and horror, and today we are going to talk about my top 10 favorite haunted house books. For the most part, they're not really in any particular order till we get to like the top three. Otherwise, I like them all kind of equally. Like they all have their unique hauntings and points. And I was thinking about too in the future of doing another kind of like my favorite weird hauntings. Like a whole street that was haunted or people being haunted, just weird haunting. So I think in the future there might be a video about that too. But today, haunted houses. So let's go. First one on the list is The Spite House by Johnny Compton. I can't remember if I saw this book on social media a bunch, which probably I did, and then I also ran into it at the library, so I picked it up because I was curious. It is a gothic thriller. The main character is Eric Ross, and him and his two daughters, they move into this house that was known as a spite house. And a spite house is built by some dumb rich person who didn't like someone that maybe they lived near, so they build a house in their line of view that just like blocks their crap. So they're like spite, our house that they built out of spite blocks the view of like someone else that lives near them. You have that, and you have all that negative energy that's in this house. So let me tell you a little bit about this book and like the whole premise. So Eric Ross, he's on the run from his past with his two daughters. And when he comes across this ad for a caretaker for the Mason house, and he hopes that he's finally kind of caught a lucky break. This house is considered like one of the most haunted places in Texas. They're looking for proof of paranormal activity, and they want someone to stay there and kind of like document it and see if there's actually weird stuff going on and like try to catch it on camera and all that stuff. So all that Eric and his daughters need to do is they need to stay in the house and keep like a detailed record of everything that happens there. And like, provided the house's horrors don't drive them all mad like the caretakers before him. This will make him a lot of money if he does it. So the job calls to Eric, not just because of the huge payout, but because he needs access to the secrets of the Spite House, if it isn't indeed haunted. Maybe it will help him understand the uncanny power that clings to his family, driving them from town to town, too afraid to stop running. I recently read his newest book too, Devils Kill Devils, which is a vampire book. I have a standalone review for that and for this one. The Spite House, I'll link the standalone review down below if you want some more info on that. But yeah, Devils Kill Devils is a vampire book, and that one's pretty awesome too. All right, but let's stay focused here, Sin. Let's stay focused on the haunted houses. All right, so next up, we have Diavola by Jennifer Thorne. So it takes place in Italy. It's in this big, beautiful old villa, and part of it is very old, but then it also had like a newer addition put on it. It's gothic, it's eerie. The main character, Anna, her family is horrible, and I hated them. But I really liked this book, and I liked the haunting and the weird stuff that happened. It was just really good. It's unhinged. It's super creepy. Just a little bit about it. Anna has two roles for the annual PACE family destination vacations: tread lightly and survive. It isn't easy when she's the only one in the family who doesn't quite fit in. Her twin brother Benny goes with the flow, so he's practically dissolved. And her older sister Nicole is so used to everyone, including her blandly docile husband and two kids, falling in line that Anna often ends up in trouble for simply asking a question. Mom seizes every opportunity to question her life choices, and Dad, when not reminding everyone who paid for the vacation, just wants some peace and quiet. The gorgeous remote villa in tiny Monteperso seems like a perfect place to endure so much family togetherness until things start going off the rails. The strange noises at night, the unsettling warnings from the local villagers, and the dark, violent past of the villa itself. Okay, and so when they get there, the caretaker has this key to like this one like tower room, and he's like, whatever you do, don't go in there. So what happens when you tell people not to go in a part of the house? Obviously somebody's gonna go in there. It's gonna unleash that has been docile and locked up. This is not good. Not good. The family is in such denial throughout the book. It's so frustrating. Like they don't believe their own eyes with the haunted stuff that keeps happening. And at some point they finally kind of do, but then once they leave, they totally deny it all again. So The family is horrible, but I really like the haunting and I like the atmosphere and I like the story and I thought it was a lot of fun. Okay, so after that one, we have The September House by Carissa Orlando. This book is super fun too. So these people, they buy an old house, they find out it's haunted, but the lady is so adamant about staying there. And it only really is haunted for certain months of the year, so it's obviously the September House starts in September. The house goes off the rails and becomes super haunted. It's humorous, it's sad, it's emotional, it's so many things. But I liked that one of the main characters was like, this is my house and these ghosts are not going to run me off, and like would actually talk to some of them. Let me tell you a little bit about it. So, why run from a haunted house when you can stay and ignore the ghosts? Just when you thought you'd seen everything a haunted house novel could do, a woman is determined to stay in her dream home even after it becomes a haunted nightmare in this compulsively readable, twisty, and layered debut novel. When Margaret and her husband Hal bought the large Victorian house on Hawthorne Street for sale at a surprisingly reasonable price, they couldn't believe they finally had a home of their own. If it's too good to be true, right? Then they discovered the hauntings. Every September, the walls drip blood. The ghosts of the former inhabitants appear, and all of them are terrified of something that lurks in the basement. Most people would flee. Margaret is not most people. Margaret is staying, and it's her house. But after 4 years, Hal cannot take it anymore, and he leaves abruptly. Now, he's not returning her calls, and their daughter Catherine, who knows nothing about the hauntings, arrives intent on looking for her missing father. To make matters worse, September has just begun, and with every attempt Margaret and Catherine make at finding Hal, the hauntings grow more harrowing because there are some secrets the house needs to keep. Okay, and what's funny about when the daughter comes, the mom tries to hide the haunting. So the mother just ends up looking like she's bat crazy because one of the ghosts, Frederica, who was like a maid that used to work there for one of the owners, Frederica likes to like move stuff around. Like she'll put all the furniture in the middle of the room and like stack it up. She'll move the dishes and put them in the bedroom or something weird like that. And so Catherine starts to think like, oh man, my mom has dementia. And then the mom is just trying to like hide all this stuff. So if she sees this stuff happening, she'll try to get her daughter out of the house and then like try to fix the stuff the ghosts are doing. And so that part's some of it's funny, but it's also emotional and heartfelt and sad, and there's so much going on in it. Great debut book for this author. All right, after that one, we have a horror romance, which is Hacienda by Isabel Cañas. This has made it on a few lists of mine. I'm a big fan of Isabel Cañas. She has quickly become a must-read author for me. I also used to be very adamant that I did not like romance, and I think a lot of reading horror romance has changed that for me, as well as cozy fantasy, because cozy fantasy, there's always a romance for the most part. So I've kind of come around in my denial of not liking romance. The Hacienda, let me tell you a little bit about it. So during the overthrow of the Mexican government, Beatrice, who's the main character, her father was executed, her home destroyed, and when the handsome Don Rodolfo Salazano proposes, Beatrice ignores the rumors surrounding his first wife's sudden demise, choosing instead to seize the security that his estate in the countryside provides. She will have her own home again, no matter the cost. Now, that cost may be kind of a large one, but Hacienda San Isidro is not the sanctuary she imagined. Oh no. When Rodolfo returns to work in the capital, visions and voices invade Beatrice's sleep. The weight of invisible eyes follows her every move. Rodolfo's sister Juana scoffs at Beatrice's fears, but she refuses to go in the house at night. Why does the cook burn copal incense at the edges of the kitchen and mark the doorway with strange symbols? What really happened to the first Dono Solazano? The hacienda is haunted AF, and it might be haunted by the ghost of his prior wife, or who knows? Could be demons, could be all kinds of stuff. We don't know. So, anyways, at some point she meets this younger priest who is also a witch, and he starts to help her with what's going on to try to like cleanse the house of whatever this activity is that is lingering, or trying to help maybe this ghost move on, or whatever it is. But there seems to be like a very dark, evil presence there. Being in these close quarters with this priest slash witch, kind of like forbidden attraction and whatnot, and so that sparks off the romance part of the book, and it's a great haunted house story. If you like horror romance and you have not read The Hacienda, definitely check this one out. And I think also that I have standalone reviews for almost every single book on this list, if not all of them. I'll tell you in a minute. Yes, I have a standalone review for every single one that is on this list. And I'll link those all down below in the description. All right, so after that one, we have This Cursed House by Del Sandine. This one I read pretty recently. In the fall of 1962, 27-year-old Gemma Baker is desperate to escape her life in Chicago and the spirits that she's always been able to see. When she receives an unexpected job offer from the Duchamp family in New Orleans, she accepts, thinking that it's her chance to start over. But Gemma discovers that the Duchamp family isn't what it seems. Light enough to pass as white, the Black family members look down on brown-skinned Gemma. Their tenuous hold on reality extends to all the members of their eccentric clan. From haughty grandmother Honorine to beautiful yet inscrutable cousin Fawcett, and soon the shocking truth comes out. The Duchamps are under a curse, and they think Gemma has the power to break it. So, as Gemma wrestles with the gift that she's run from all her life, she unravels deeper and more disturbing secrets about the mysterious Duchamps, secrets that stretch back over a century, secrets that bind her to their fate if she fails. Okay, so she was adopted, and she had lived in Chicago, and she was with this man who's cheating on her, knocked up some other lady, and finally, like, she got the F out of Dodge and left him and was staying with her friend Betty. And she gets this letter in the mail for this job for this family. She's just desperate to get out, and the letter, like, doesn't really say what the job is for, but she was a teacher, so she assumed it's for, like, a tutor position. So she gets there. She gets to this place, this big old house. When they have dinner and whatnot, she's like, oh, so who am I going to be teaching? Da 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 da. And the family's like, oh, yeah, we're not going to talk about that right now. Don't worry about it. Da 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 da. like you're going to help out Grand Mir and do this and that. So she's like, okay, that's weird. And so she starts helping the Grand Mir and do this other stuff. And at some point, she finds out that there's this curse on this family and the family wants her to break it. And she's like, I don't know how to do any of that. What the F are you guys talking about? The house has a weird, like, burning smell to it because in the past there was a fire there and people died, and just it's a dark and disturbing story. And I really liked the characters. I really liked the story and the weird history of the house. It's super messed up, and it was a great read. I highly enjoyed it. And I keep saying, like, highly recommend for all these. Well, I do. Obviously, they're on this list. All right, so after that one, we have Through the Midnight Door by Katrina Monroe. This one follows three sisters. When they were all younger, they followed this, like, skeevy little boy into this weird, broken down haunted house. And when they went in the house, some messed up stuff happened. And when they left, it came home with them and it haunted them for years and years. Three sisters, three keys, three unspeakable horrors. The Finch sisters once spent long hot summers exploring the dozens of abandoned properties littering their dying town until they found an impossible home with an endless hall of doors. And three keys left waiting for them. Curious, fearless, they stepped inside their chosen rooms. So each went in like a separate room and just weird stuff happened to each individual person. And they experienced horrors they never dared speak of. So they never talked about it to each other. They were zip, zip. So now, years later, the youngest sister Claire has been discovered dead in the old desiccated house, haunted by their sister's suicide and the memories of a past they struggle to forget. Meg and Esther find themselves at bitter odds as they navigate the tensions of their brutal relationship, and they draw unsettling lines between Claire's death, their own haunted memories, and a long ago loss no one in the family has ever been able to face, with the house once again pulling them ever closer. Meg and Esther must find the connection between their sister's death and the shadow that has chased them across the years before the darkness claims them too. If they don't face the crap, they will probably both die. So it's an intense book. Yeah, it starts out, and the youngest, Claire, she calls up Meg in like the middle of the night, and she's like, hey, I'm here, says some stuff, and like Meg tries to keep her on the phone, and she's getting in the car and she's trying to get there. She knows where she is. She knows that she's in the house, and Meg's kind of like trying to keep her talking, and Clara's like, I think I know how to make it stop, then hangs up. And then she's trying to get there in time, but she does not make it in time. And then that's when they find Claire hanging in the house. I felt the family dynamic was really well portrayed, just how effed up some families and their relationships can be when they get so broken over time and whatnot. And I thought it was a really great weird story with what the haunting was and how the darkness from the house just like seeped into all of them and in different ways and how it affected them. And it's just a really good book. Okay, so after that one, this is a T. Kingfisher book, and it is A House with Good Bones. I loved this one. It is so good. It's so weird. Really love the variety of like all the different stuff that T. Kingfisher writes, whether it's fantasy or a fantasy retelling or like her House of Usher retelling. The variety and weirdness and whimsicalness is awesome. And A House with Good Bones is a great haunted house story. Let me tell you a little bit about this one. There's a brother and a sister. Brother's like, Mom seems off. So her brother's words echo in Sam Montgomery's ear as she turns onto the quiet North Carolina street where their mother lives alone. She brushes the thought away as she climbs the front steps. Sam's excited for this rare extended visit, looking forward to the nights when just the two of them drinking box wine, watching murder mystery shows, guessing who the killer is long before the characters figure it out. But stepping inside, she quickly realizes home isn't what it used to be. Gone is the warm and cluttered charm that her mother is known for. The walls are now painted a sterile white. Her mom jumps at like the smallest noises and looks over her shoulder, even when she's the only person in the room. And when Sam steps out back to clear her head, she finds a jar of teeth hidden between the magazine-worthy rose bushes, and vultures are circling the garden from above. So find out like what's got her mom so frightened in her own home. Sam will go digging for the truth, but some secrets are better left buried. Okay, so the house that the mom lives in used to be like the grandmother's, and the grandmother was like this horrible racist crap bag, angry, just bitter old biddy. She's haunting this place. The grandmother was really great with roses. I think she married really young to a really weird, horrible man who was doing like these effed up experiments, like trying to play God and stuff. It's been a minute since I've read this book, but it's so freaking weird, but it's also really freaking good too. And when she gets there too, Sam, she comes up and like on her mailbox, the mom's mailbox, there's like this big vulture just sitting there, which is one of the neighbors' vultures that lives down the road. She has a pet vulture, whatever, and it hangs out on the mom's her mom's mailbox sometimes. Sometimes there's other ones on the roof and whatnot too. So yeah, it's a lot of fun if you like T. Kingfisher and you haven't read this yet and you like haunted houses. A House with Good Bones. I loved it. Okay, so now we're getting to my top three, and these are actually like in an order of what my top three are. Okay, and I'm gonna say this one, and people are gonna be like, Sin, that's not a house. These people live there for the time being, and wherever you live is a home. So I'm gonna count it, even though it's not a house. Shut up. I mean, if you really don't agree, that's fine. You're allowed to disagree with me. That's totally fine. So, The Shining by Stephen King. It's one of my favorite haunted stories. Up there in my favorite King books. One of these days, too, I need to do like a top 10 favorite Stephen King books. Anyways, The Shining. Jack Torrance, Danny Torrance, Wendy Torrance. They go and stay at the Overlook Hotel, and Jack Torrance has struggled with alcoholism most of his life. And when he is drinking, he is horrible and abusive and not good. But they go stay at the Overlook Hotel. Supposedly, there's not going to be any alcohol there. Jack's like probably going to be able to get some writing done, and he's going to be the caretaker over the winter, take care of it, make sure everything's, clean, and just upkeep the maintenance, make sure the boiler is good, the steam pressure is released, and all that stuff. And so they all go to live there over the off season. And stuff starts to get weird. There are ghosts there. And Danny Torrance, the little boy, has what you call the shine, where he can communicate telepathically. He sees ghosts, he sees spirits, and stuff gets really weird when he starts to see ghosts and stuff happening in the hotel. And the hotel has a really bad effect on Jack. Like, Jack starts to become infiltrated and haunted by these ghosts that are there. I mean, I feel like most people know what The Shining is. Either you've seen the movie at this point in time or read the book, but maybe you don't. So I guess maybe let me tell you the actual synopsis instead of me just like kind of rambly bambling. Okay, it's kind of basically what I said. The synopsis is very short, but I looked up. Yeah, Jack Torrance's new job at the Overlook Hotel is a perfect chance for a fresh start. As the off-season caretaker at the atmospheric old hotel, he'll have plenty of time to spend reconnecting with his family and working on his writing. But as the harsh winter weather sets in, oh yeah, they get snowed in too. And like, there's also these weird topiary animals that maybe come to life and chase you. But the only one who really notices at first the strange, terrible forces gathering is Danny Torrance. And then if you've read The Shining and you've never read Doctor Sleep, which is the sequel that happens like King wrote this like 17 years later. He wrote the sequel. I think it was that many years. It is a long time between these. And it's a story about when Danny Torrance grows up. It's so good. I might actually like Doctor Sleep more than I like The Shining, but I love The Shining as a haunted house story. Awesome. Okay, so in the number 2 spots, we have We Used to Live Here by Marcus Kluwer. And I like weird books that don't make sense sometimes. And We Used to Live Here is so freaking weird and liminal. And the is time is an illusion in this. I don't know. Like the characters kind of maybe travel through time and dimensions, and there seems to be weird portals, maybe through the basement or through an old cabin in the woods and all this weird stuff. As I said, I have standalone reviews for all of these books, so I'll have that down below. Like this book, if you want a little more information, I've only been talking a little bit about each of these briefly, just because the video will be so long if I go on and on. But Charlie and Eve get this killer deal on this house, this old house in this picturesque neighborhood. It is kind of isolated though. It's not really a picturesque neighborhood, I would say. The neighbors are kind of further down the road. So they flip houses and usually they move into a house, spend a year there, dependent on how long it takes, flip it, move on to the next house. So they're working on the house one day and there's a knock on the door and a man stands there with his family, claiming he used to live there years before, and asking if it would be okay if he showed his kids around, and Eve lets them in. Charlie is not home at this point. She didn't really want to let these people in because she's like, her alarm bells are kind of going off, but she pushes it all down and lets them in anyways. Shouldn't have done that. So as soon as the strangers enter the home, weird stuff starts happening, including the family's youngest child going missing and a ghostly presence materializing in the basement. Even more weird, the family can't seem to take the hint that their visit should be over. Like, go home. And when Charlie suddenly vanishes, Eve, slowly losing her grip on reality, something is terribly wrong with the house and with the visiting family. Or is Eve just imagining things? Is it all in her head? I don't know. You have to read it to find out. And it's so weird. And it's got a little bit of that like House of Leaves vibe, but it's not like you don't have to read the book upside down or sideways or go through like some of the misery that is House of Leaves. Like this book reads and it's just freaking weird. And I loved how weird it was. All right. And this next one, I guess this is like a haunted mansion. So it's still a house, just a larger house. And my favorite one is episode 13. I read episode 13 by Craig DeLuey last year, and I read that for the Occult Detective October. And I'd had that book for a while. It had just been sitting on my shelf, and I'd meant to read it sooner. And I loved it so much. It's so good. So it follows this like team of paranormal researchers. Their show's called like Fade to Black. And they get the chance to go and investigate this place called the Paranormal Research Foundation. It's this brooding mansion that has secrets and clues about the bizarre experiments that took place there in the 1970s. So there was a bunch of like doctors and hippie people that worked there and they did like weird like psi experiments. They all mysteriously disappeared. So it's famously haunted. The team hopes that their scientific teachings and high-tech gear will prove it. But as the house begins to reveal itself to them, proof of the afterlife might not be everything that Matt dreamed of. Matt and Claire Kirkland are the main characters. A story told in broken pieces and tapes, journals, and correspondence. This is the story of episode 13 and how everything went terribly, horribly wrong. So this team goes to investigate the house and they get there and they set up in different rooms and like in the basement there's like this well down there, which is kind of weird. And they got like kind of like a weird vibe feeling when they were in there. But then the rest of the house, they don't really feel much of anything. And so they like set up some different stuff in some of the different rooms, like trigger objects and whatnot. And eventually like something happens that scares the crap out of them that might have just been a ghost. But also, at some point in the well, because they decided maybe we should go into the basement because there were some weird vibes and feelings down there. Maybe we should investigate down there. At some point in the well, it's like they find a door down there and they're like, what the F is this? This also has like a weird House of Leaves vibe too, because once they go in that doorway, they end up in like a weird labyrinth. And that's all I'm going to say about that. Awesome. This was my number one, absolutely favorite. Do you guys have a favorite haunted house book or story, or even just like a specific? It doesn't have to be a house. Maybe it's about a haunted train or haunted woods. I don't know. Let me know down in the comments because I'm always looking for good haunting stories, especially the weirder the better. If you enjoy videos where I talk about multiple books I have read or am reading, next video coming up will be about that. And if you enjoyed hanging out today, hit that subscribe button, come back, see me again, and we'll talk about more bookish things and weird stuff.